Hello, welcome. Today is the second episode of our series of book summary. The book that we are talking about is called A Brief History of Intelligence. Last time we talked mainly about intelligence with no brain. For organisms like plants, bacteria, and fungi, this is perfectly enough. But we mentioned this is not sufficient for animals because their strategy is to catch food, to move, to catch the food, to steal the energy from it, and for that it needs to develop better intelligence to orient itself in the world. And so there's a strong incentive to do better, to move better, and to catch more prey. Catch more prey, indeed. But firstly, let's talk about the geometry of the body. First big animal, but more similar to corals than actually something that we would normally think about. Yeah, but as you can see on the photo, the symmetry, the radial symmetry is quite unpractical. Everything expands from the center. So moving is complex because there are infinite directions to choose from. You're just going left or right. You can go to infinite amount of directions. So it's much more difficult for that to operate and move in the environment. That's why most of the animals have bilateral symmetry. So body with clear beginning and end, head and tail. So this is where our story begins because when they have this bilateral symmetry, they can easier move in the world, easily operate in the world because they are just moving left and right, not infinite direction. So animal, the first breakthrough for this animal was to learn how to steer, how to move left or to the right. The first animal that we're going to talk about is similar to nematodes. This is your grandpa. If we talk about, we are talking about the ancestors of us humans. So if you have a big album of all your grandparents and you turn each page by page, at some point this will show up. These nematodes, these earthworms, these are your ancestors. But they're quite more less complex. Nematodes has only 302 neurons. When we compare it to 85 billion neurons in human, it's kind of nothing. But it's the first step. And the first step, you have to start somewhere, and the blueprint of our intelligence starts from here. The first of intelligence was not thinking; it was simply moving towards the food and away from from the danger. So this is what I'm going to talk about today. So firstly, how they make decision, how to steer left or to the right. I'll explain the origin of emotions, and then later on the origin of learning. So how our early ancestor could go beyond the genetic intelligence. So let's start with a question: how to decide where to move? So the signal was not just yes and no to go there or now, to go left or right, but it was about the intensity of the direction. So it tells to the worm how much it wants to steer towards or away from something. Another important thing is categorization. So to make any decision, the brain has to categorize the world in two buckets: the good to get closer to, and the bad to go away from. So imagine a scenario. There is a food over there, but the terrain is dangerous. Should the worm cross to get the food or not? Well, for that, you need to one single decision, yes or no. That can be like probability. It should be one clear decision. Am I going for the food or am I not going at the food? Is the trade-off enough or not? Well, because some neighbors are saying yes, go, but some are saying no, there's obstacles, so no, don't go. So there's a voting system. All the sensor input, the smell, the touch, the temperature, must be wired in one place to make one single decision to go or not. And this integration center for this voting system, there is where the origin of brain starts. And yet, let's talk about emotions. What is the origin of emotions? Well, emotions are not just feelings. They are active states of the organism. They are defined by two axes. As you can see, the valence means just positive or negative, and arousal is intensity, how strong it is. So, as you can see, when the valence is negative and the high arousal is there, it's saying to the worm, go away, escape. This is not good. But if the valence is positive, it's saying it, it's active mode. There's a food and wants to exploit it as much as possible. Then there is a positive valence, but arousal is low. This is when the worm is calm, there's no movement needed, all the needs are met, and it's fully saturated. And the last one is negative valence and low arousal. There's no movement. It's a trap in bad stress state, which is a chronic state. And this is just the basic emotions. From these four categories, all emotions arise. This is the biggest and clearest scope of what emotion is. But here's a question. Why emotions last? Why they are taking so long? Like, if I, let's say I feel anxious because of some exam or something, the exam vanish, but I can still feel anxious. I can still feel much more anxious or stress. Even the reason fades away. Why is this happening to us, but also to the worms? Well, that's because in nature, when we talk about the worms, not all sensory input is perfect. So, for example, the smell of the food might vanish in the wind, or a predator might slip behind a bush, but it can come back. Just because it's not clear now doesn't mean that it can come back. So if the worm would just stop the movement immediately when the signal is gone, the animal would fail. You will not get food because the smell for a few seconds just disappear, or because the prey just hide for a while. So emotions keep the state persisting. So the organism can continue movement until the goal is reached or the threat is truly gone. So it's more about the persistency. Because we are living in the world that we cannot completely sense. So this persistency give us guide how should we motivate and how should we behave. This is on the worms and this is still in us. So emotions are the guide. It's saying how should we behave, what should we do. Motivation leads you to do the decisions. Yes. Now, one of the emotions is the neuromodulators, as dopamine, serotonin, adrenaline. These are released between the neurons, and they don't just carry signals, they also change how sensitive neurons are to activation. For example, dopamine are more like the anticipation of wanting, not the pleasure itself, but the wanting. The drive for exploitation is kind of similar. Still the driving for food, but many other stuff as well. Serotonin for the worm was released when it was eating, when the food was inside the worm. It indicates the saturation, the satisfaction, and the reduce of impulsivity. Another one is adrenaline. It's triggered to escape, high levels of fight or flight. It's kind of similar as well. So yes, dopamine is about the anticipation of the future and the pleasure of the present. Example. As with boosted dopamine, we'll exploit everything. They'll eat everything made with everyone, just non-stop. And as with boosted serotonin, they'll stop eating. You can delay gratification. This wanting and not liking can also explain a lot about us humans. It explains why we are stuck avoiding things that don't make us actually happy. This is the root cause of 300 million cases of depression and 250 million anxiety disorders globally. Right, let's now talk about depression. So, active stress is when you actively trying to store energy to escape for your survival. But the chronic stress is an evolutionary strategy to also save energy. If a threat cannot be escaped, there's no reason to waste energy to try to escape. It just will not do any useless movement. This is the numb state. In the chronic state, also serotonin is as well released, but in the way that it inhibits high valence and high arousal responses. So you kind of feel you lose motivation. You cannot really do anything. So yeah, it kind of proves that you are nothing without your brain chemicals. When you see the people depressed sitting in their homes doing nothing, they cannot even leave their house. But this is how the chemistry in their brain works. They don't have any motivation to do anything because we are nothing without the chemicals in our brain. As opioids, opioids can also be produced by our bodies. They are normally produced when stress ends and the natural opioids come to return to positive baseline. But what if we would take artificial opioids, like heroin, for example? Well, this will flood the system with extreme amount of euphoria. The brain wasn't ready to handle this, and so it adapts by shifting its baseline. And so the new norm is not good enough. It just feels as a chronic stress because the new baseline is much, much higher to just feel any satisfaction. And so you feel great urge to take the drugs again. Just to feel okay, just to feel normal. From the reason why 90% of heroin addicts relapse. So just to summarize about emotions, I talk about the four basic categories of emotions. I explain why emotions last, and we talk about dopamine, serotonin, and stress. Yes, and now we can talk about the origin of learning. There would be no reason for learning if we lived in static world. If the world would never change, a steering would be enough. Just some generics steering would be enough in genes. But the world is constantly shifting, so it needs more. It needs to learn. Because learning is about the changing of balance. Learning is just about just summarizing, as we know from school. But it's the process of changing what before was good, now to bad, or from bad to good. To give you an example, cold temperature is good when the environment is hot, but it's bad when it's freezing. To give you another example with worms, for example, CO2 is released by food, but also by predators. So it's good or bad. It depends. If the nematode, the worm, is starving, it go for the wood, for the food. But if it's full, if it's saturated, it will not take the risk. It will not take the risk. Another example, nematode in fresh water feels hungry and learn to seek salt, which is positive valence. But nematode in salt water will still away from the salt. It doesn't need the salt. A negative valence. In one context is positive, in another one is negative. And the last example, if a form has a good food, but then you mix it with chemicals and it makes you sick, you will not take it anymore. It can learn to adapt from the good to the bad. This is important because AI has a big difficulty with this. Is AI, artificial intelligence, is missing this contextual intelligence. So for example, the current self-driving cars cannot really do that They learn from massive databases to categorize the world in good and bad or different categories, but they can't easily change these categories once they are set and clear. So to change anything, most of the time they are start learning from the complete beginning. Now, I want to explain how brain learns. The brain learns through association. They will learn what will lead to the good outcome or avoid the bad one. So it's more about prediction. The simple from association. You feel the smell of the food, which you associate that it means river, it means the food itself. The smell indicates there is a food. This is also called Pavlov reflex. Maybe you heard about it. It's the dog when it's hear the ring of the bell, it knows it's conditioned to know that it will get the food. So every time there's a ring about, I will get food. So I ring the bell, and the dog already produces a lot of saliva because it's ready to eat. This is the conditioning. And when the bell stops, the brain unlearned it. It extinguished this connection. But there's still memory trace, so it can easily get the association again. But it's through this association that we are learning. For example, you're drinking too much tequila, you are puking, and like every time you smell the tequila, it makes you sick. Or you just smell a coffee nearby and you want to drink a coffee. You hear good gym music and you want to exercise. You sit down on your bed when you come home and you are conditioned to do the wheels. You did one time bad public speech and you expect bad reward when you do public speeches again because last time you screwed up. Okay, this is how we learn association. But how to do a good association? How to know which association lead to a good outcome? Because the world is noisy. If you get sick after a meal, what was the reason? Was the food itself? Or the music that was playing around? I don't know, the color of the plate or other reasons why it makes you sick? Who knows? Well, the brain in the simpler worms, in simple nematodes, we're using four strategies. The first one is called eligibility traces. So it just learns what happened the last second before the event, so before you're eating the food. So timing is the key. Another one is overshadowing. The brain chooses the loudest or the strongest cue and ignores the faint ones. Like for example, the strong smell of the food indicates that there is a food. That's a simple example. Another one, the third one, is latent inhibition. The brain focuses on what is new because from the new it can easily learn. If you eat a meal you had 100 times, but add a one new spice and get sick, your brain blames the new spice, obviously. And the last is blocking. If a clue already predicts an outcome perfectly, the brain blocks new clues, no need for new clues. It doesn't waste energy learning a second signal for the same result. This is how it works. But how it exactly works on the level of the neurons? Because it's not some magic that suddenly we learn something new. It's about the plasticity of the brain. The connection between neurons are changing. They can get strengthened or they can get weakened. New can be formed, older can be removed. But the key is the same. Neurons that fire together wire together. And it's the association. If this happens, they fire together, there is strong sense that this will happen again. It's physical. It's I think it's the network, the connection that makes what you learn or what nematodes learn. So just to summarize, learning was not original function of the brain, it was just to optimize steering. Learning is an upgrade. Learning evolves simply as a way to make steering more accurate and predictive. world, how you can go beyond your own genes. That's it. Thank you very much.